Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Monday, May 1st. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Indiana game is in 125 days. The game against Michigan in 209 days. And boy, oh boy, was it a weekend for the Ohio State football team. I knew as soon as I said, all right, we're not going to do any more weekend episodes of the morning show because we're kind of getting into the quiet time of year, that immediately the news would blow up over the weekend. So yes, I guess you're welcome. I will take all the credit for all of the good news that happened for Ohio State this weekend. Let's start with some of that good news with our buddy Marc Givler from BuckeyeHuddle.com. Mark, it was a busy weekend in the transfer portal. It was a busy weekend in recruiting visits. It was a busy weekend in recruiting commitments. Let's start with the one that might have the biggest impact on the 2023 Buckeyes, and that is the commitment of San Diego State transfer Josh Simmons, who gives the Buckeyes one more body at a very, very big position of need on the offensive line.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to overreact to this, but to me, this was huge. I was a little uneasy with what I saw out of the right tackle position during the spring availability that we had. We got to watch, 5 or 6 practices maybe, and it just felt like that right side was not consistently holding up. Now, they're going against a great group of defensive ends there. I think Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau are NFL guys. I think Kenyatta Jackson's going to be an NFL guy in a couple of years. So, it's good competition they're going against, but it just gave me an uneasy feeling. It really felt like they needed another body. And Simmons, has about a dozen starts under his belt already, has multiple years of eligibility left. I believe he has 3 to play 3. So, could legitimately be a multi-year starter for them. And was a very highly recruited. I think everyone's looking and saying, San Diego State, why would you go get a kid from San Diego State? Well, he had 30-plus offers coming out of high school, and he lived in the San Diego area, and he just wanted to stay at home. He had offers from a lot of the Pac-12 powers. He had offer from Michigan. He had an offer from Georgia. So this is a guy who, was a 4-star prospect coming out, and so he's not your kind of traditional, G5 type of player or prospect. He was, for San Diego State was the equivalent of getting a 5-star. So, and then they battled Florida and Oklahoma for him once he was in the portal. So a lot of big programs wanted him.
And one of the other Power 5 programs that was going after Josh Simmons coming out of high school was UCLA, whose offensive line coach at the time was a guy named Justin Fry, who that may be a name that sounds familiar because he's now Ohio State's offensive line coach. So that is one of the connections that maybe helped make this happen for them. And this is not a 5-star absolute lock to be a lockdown tackle, but it's someone, as you said, with starting experience. It's someone who gives them the potential of a multi-year starter, and it's someone who just feels like it maybe raises the floor a little bit for this year's Ohio State team at a position where it was probably the single biggest question for the team coming out of the spring. So yeah, this is not necessarily the next Orlando Pace, but he doesn't have to be the next Orlando Pace to make a possibly very positive impact on this year's Ohio State team. So all right, so that is one transfer down who is coming through the transfer portal. The other big name coming in this weekend was Lorenzo Styles Jr., obviously the older brother of current Ohio State safety Sonny Styles, the son of the former Ohio State linebacker of the same name, Lorenzo Styles Sr. And, he's someone, Mark, this is obviously a family you know very well and have known for a very long time. Where does Lorenzo Styles Jr. fit coming into Ohio State this year?
Well, look, I mean, they've missed on their number at cornerback. You could argue going back about 5 years now, it seems almost every year. Between the poor recruiting that was done there under some previous coaches, and then they get Jeff Hafley in there, and he leaves, and Clark Phillips leaves the class right before signing day. Kerry Combs kind of had the same thing. They lose a kid before signing day to Texas, and it just, even last year, they lose a kid to Florida. So it just, every year it feels like they've been coming up kind of one short. And so I like what they have at the top of the room. I like the starters. I think they're going to have, I think it's going to be one of the most, improved position groups, but they need another body in there. And I think this is a perfect fit because they don't need Lorenzo Styles Jr. Unless there's just a wave of injuries. They do not need Lorenzo Styles Jr. to come in and save the day. They don't need him to come in and start. In fact, the best thing to do might be to redshirt him this year as he relearns the position. He played it in high school. He's been playing it all his life pretty much until he went to Notre Dame. But just get acclimated with the defense, get reacclimated to playing corner full time, and get him into. You can get him into 4 games with the new the redshirt rules and everything else. He didn't use a redshirt at Notre Dame, so he's got 3 years to play 3 years to play 2. So I think you just let him take all the pressure off of him and say, look, we're going to reteach you to play this position. And, this was a kid that I thought was a better corner prospect coming out of high school than wide receiver prospect. And he caught, 50 some balls at Notre Dame his first 2 years, played 2 years at Notre Dame. And so he was a solid receiver for them, but I think his highest upside's at corner. So I'm going to be fascinated to see how his development goes here the next 6 to 8 months.
Yeah, and again, that's 2 guys who they could potentially have for the next 3 years. Simmons could play 3, Styles could play 2 of 3, but this is not just the short-term Band-Aid that you typically think of in the transfer portal. These could be potentially some kind of a long-term solution for them. So definitely something to keep an eye on there, and that's a little bit of maybe a little more future-facing, but 2 very big additions to the transfer portal for Ohio State. And they had a third guy, a potential transfer target, visiting this weekend as well. Those 2 guys were both in town, and so was Tywone Malone. He is a defensive tackle transferring from Ole Miss. And you mentioned earlier, Mark has great connections with the Styles family, has really been killing it on that front. And Mark, our good buddy Alex Slightman, this is why we talk about having a team of insiders. The Styles family. Alex has known a lot of folks close to Malone going back to his high school days in New Jersey. This is one where a little bit of a tag team effort between you guys, giving us all the inside information this weekend on these different recruitments. What did Alex have on Tywone Malone this weekend?
Yeah, Alex has a great report on our message board over at BuckeyeHuddle.com, but the vibe right now is that things went really well over the weekend. Ohio State would take Malone's commitment if he wanted to give it, and right now he has a scheduled visit to Miami next week and should decide after that. We'll see if Ohio State can turn up the heat enough to get him to cancel that. It doesn't sound like that's happened to this point, so we'll kind of see where that goes, but boy, that would be a great depth add. I love their starting defensive tackles. I think Tyleik Williams and Mike Hall are going to be a fantastic tandem. I think Ty Hamilton gives you a really nice third defensive tackle, but it feels like they're kind of they need that 4th guy to have that true rotation as Hero Kanu continues to develop and as some of the younger guys come into the program. It just feels like they're maybe one short there right now as far as their full rotation, and this would be great. I mean, especially with I personally think Mike Hall's probably off to the NFL after this year if he stays healthy. I mean, he to me strikes me as someone who could be a 1st-round draft pick if he stays healthy. So again, kind of building that depth that you need to kind of sustain some of these future losses, and another kid with multiple years of eligibility. And we'll see. I guess he's willing to give up the baseball dream, which I think hurt Ohio State the first time around coming out of high school. So this is why you stay on, kids, and you build good relationships in the high school ranks, and you don't burn bridges.
Yeah, and Malone, just for people who don't remember, Malone was coming out of high school determined to play both baseball and football. And, if you're looking baseball and you're trying to play baseball at a high level, you can't really fault a kid for looking down south to do that. And now that, he maybe has recognized that his future may lay on the football field, well, you can't really fault someone for leaving Ole Miss and potentially thinking about moving up to Ohio State in much the same way. So that's the third name to know on the transfer portal front. We will be keeping an eye on that one all week long at BuckeyeHuddle.com. And as I said, Alex has had tremendous information on this one the whole way. So if you are interested in whether this is actually going to happen or not, Alex is your man. You can find him on the huddle board at BuckeyeHuddle.com. So those are the 2 transfer portals commitments, the 1 transfer portal target who is on campus this weekend. The Buckeyes also got a regular old high school recruit. That still is a thing that they do. They still do recruit high schools. And this weekend they landed Jordan Lyle, 4-star running back. And I think, Mark, this is someone where everyone who looks at his film, everyone who looks at his highlights comes away and it's just like, oh boy, this is someone who has a potential to be someone pretty special in the running back room for Ohio State.
He's a home run hitter. lot of big plays on that film, and coming out of a program like St. Thomas Aquinas, there's no questioning the competition. They play one of the toughest schedules in the country, so he's running away from really fast guys down there in Florida. So definitely a home run hitter. He's got a lot of wiggle to his game. I think he'll be good out of the backfield as they continue to try and involve the running backs in the passing game. I think it's important on a few levels, but to me, one of the more interesting parts about this is we've kind of wondered what happened to Ohio State at St. Thomas Aquinas. They haven't been able to get the guys out of there the last few years, really since the Bosa brothers and Trayvon Grimes are probably the last guys. So it kind of dried up there a little bit for them, and so to get back at that program, that's always big, and it gives them, look, they're going to lose, I think they're going to lose at least 3 running backs after this year. I mean, they're going to lose Mayan Williams and Chip Trainum, and it's very possible Trevion Henderson could go pro after this year. And then it's like, oh my gosh, if one other player hits the portal, it's like, oh my goodness. So you're already losing, 2 for sure and likely 3. So it does make some sense. It'll be interesting to see how they kind of space this roster out, though, because you don't want to get too cluttered, because you're just going to lose a guy or two to the portal eventually if things get too congested. So it'll kind of be interesting to see how they can balance this. Maybe one of them gets off to a really good start and kind of fast tracks like a J.K. Dobbins did, and maybe one of them, maybe a Sam Williams Dixon, who I know they're kind of recruiting as an athlete, but I think will probably end up as a running back. Maybe he's more willing to redshirt as an Ohio guy and kind of take the patient path that we've seen a lot of Ohio guys take. So it'll be interesting. They've got a roster management situation there they're going to have to deal with, but I love what Jordan Lyle brings, and love his ability to hit the deep one.
Yeah, I think people who may be saying, wait a minute, don't they already have 2 running backs in this class? James Peoples, of course, there, Sam Williams Dixon there, and now Jordan Lyle. And in case you were wondering, sometimes you get the drama where, I was the first running back in this class, and how dare you take another running back? James Peoples tweeted on Saturday night, this running back room looking stacked, welcome home. So apparently 2 thumbs up from James Peoples on this edition for Ohio State. And, the Sam Williams-Dixon thing is interesting because you could slide him back in terms of a red shirt, and you space the class out that way. He was, when you mentioned using him potentially as an athlete, I saw someone comp him to, maybe he's in like that Xavier Johnson role or something like that. Is that the kind of thing you think he might, maybe where he fits in, and then it's not 3 true running backs, it's, 2 and sort of running back adjacent?
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. I think that would be a good use of his skills. And like you mentioned, I think it's very interesting how supportive James Peoples has been of all this. Obviously, he was the first one to commit, but he knew they were going to take at least one more. Probably knew he's probably done this plan all along. So it's nice to see him being supportive of all this. This class is really seems very close, and I know it's kind of interesting we're saying this now. After the Dylan Raiola decommitment, everyone's looking around like they don't have a lot of commits. Who's going to take charge of this? Where are things going? Who's leading right now? And boy, like James Peoples and Jeremiah Smith and Ian Moore and those guys and the Armstrong twins, they have really just picked things up here, and it's become a very close group. And I think that's going to continue to pay dividends here the next 6 months as we kind of go through the process.
Yeah, and we will be going through that process at Buckeye Huddle this week, this month, this summer, this fall. It is trending to be another very, very good Ohio State class. I was just pulling up, as Mark was talking, the top of the recruiting rankings right now. Number 1, Michigan has 15 commits. They are number 1 by just a couple points over Ohio State, which has only 13 commits. So you can feel free to argue on Twitter about whether the total ranking or the average ranking matters the most. That's a great place to do that. You can also do that at on the huddle board at BuckeyeHuddle.com. But it is going to be quite a fall, quite a summer, quite a fall of recruiting for the Buckeyes, for the Wolverines, for the future of the Big Ten and the national championship race. Georgia number 3, a lot of schools that are probably going to be targets for Ohio State in the future, all sort of battling for with the Buckeyes for a lot of those top players. So there's going to be a whole lot to talk about on the huddle board at BuckeyeHuddle.com. A whole lot of recruiting insider information you can only get from guys like Mark and Alex, who just absolutely kill it. It's all about connections and sources, and these guys have them pretty much everywhere. It's amazing. We sure do get the information a little ahead of the rest of the world, a decent amount there at BuckeyeHuddle.com. So you're going to want to check that out, and also make sure you check out our YouTube channel, YouTube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. We've had a lot of instant reaction shows going up this weekend to some of these commitments, so you can get a little more in-depth information on all of those, and you'll undoubtedly, when there are more commitments, as there undoubtedly will be, you'll be able to find all of those at youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle, and finally at youtube.com/@CFBPlaybook. Lots of great stuff going up there as well. We're starting to ramp that channel up now during the off season, so make sure you're subscribed to that one as well. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.